Hi everybody, this is Eric Johnson. Today I want to say a couple of things before we get into this video. The first is I love my sister. I want to make sure everyone understands I love my sister. Anything I said about my sister that was misconstrued as me having a problem with her being at my house was my fault. But I wasn't talking about my sister. I was talking about the circumstance that she and I found ourselves under. She was supposed to be over here for 3 weeks while her house was renovated. It turned into a month, then it turned into a month and 2 weeks, then it turned into 2 months, and then out of the blue, we got the news it could be another month. At that point, your brain starts getting a little fried not because you don't like the other person, because you kept getting incrementally, it's not a good way to do it. It would have been a lot easier for both of us if they had just said, it's going to take 3 months. Then she would have come over here with that expectation, as would I. So when I complained about the situation, I was not complaining about my sister as a person. We go out to lunch at least once a week, regardless of whether she's staying over here or not. So we get along great. It's just that it was a rough 3 months, and as I explained earlier, I'm not going to go over it again. While she was here, I just didn't feel like I wanted to do videos. So she's now happily back home. I have to tell you a funny story, though. She went home. She was done with the 3 months of having to be here. She had her own frustrations, believe me, having to stay away from her home every night and part of every day. So she gets to go home. She goes home. And 2 days later, she calls me and she says, I hope you don't get angry, but I have to come stay at your house again. The sewer pipe had become clogged up because her toilet, one of her 2 toilets, had not been used since October, November, December, January, February, March, April. Wow, yeah, that's like 8 months. So it had gotten clogged up, so she couldn't use her toilet again, so they had to send her back over here, and it's really fun. I mean, we're both looking on it now, kind of laughing, kind of. But I will say this: the contractor who ended up finishing it, he was there at the beginning and he was there at the end. There was another contractor involved that he had to kind of hold their hand and also fix their mistakes. And that contractor, I'm not going to get into it with them. COVID has really been bad for supply lines and stuff. All of the people doing contract work have had a bitch with the COVID because of supplies and stuff. And this contractor who is our guy, he'll be coming over and working on my condominium because I'm going to be selling within a year and moving out closer to Charleston, South Carolina. And it's going to be a whole nother exciting thing I hope you guys follow me for. Very soon now, we're going to open up my Equinox 800 metal detector, which has been sitting in my living room for a year. Unopened. You're going, what? Yes, I have had an Equinox 800 metal detector. Very nice metal detector. Not cheap, but also not one of the most expensive. I mean, the really expensive ones are ridiculous. They're like multiple thousands of dollars. This one was just under, I think it was around 800. Yeah, it was around 800. It's the Equinox 800. There's no correlation to the price. I'm just saying. It's a really nice. We're going to open that up. Here's what I'm going to do though in the future though. I'm moving out closer to the coast. So I want to be about 20 to 30 minutes from the ocean, the beaches, South Carolina coast, North Carolina coast, but especially the South Carolina coast where I live, and the Florida coast, and of course Georgia, but it has a very short coastline between Florida and South Carolina. Big treasure hunting beaches because of all the gold galleons that went down in the 1700s, 1600s, and a lot of shipwrecks right up into the 1800s, even with Confederate gold and stuff. So it's a massive coastline for finding treasure, and a lot of people have been doing it a long time. I think it'd be just a great way to spend my latter years going out in the sunshine on the beaches and looking for gold and treasure and artifacts. I just think it's going to be funner than hell. So we're going to open up the metal detector very soon, and when I move out there, you guys are all coming, and we're going to go treasure hunting on the beaches. But right now, we're talking about Forrest Fenn. What today is about is, it's a very, very, very interesting video. I have yet another searcher friend that I have been talking with behind the scenes. This guy is super smart and just has a great way of dealing with all the different aspects of the Forrest Fenn Treasure Hunt. He wants to be totally anonymous. This is not the first time I've run into this with people that I know behind the scenes. There are a few of them. In this particular case, I think the reason is he used to be in government. I don't think he is right now, but he used to be in government. And I have the suspicion, like some people that have to do with the treasure hunt, that he doesn't really want to be known, because the treasure hunt, for some people, is considered, well, you saw what happened with me and my sister, right? Now it's a hoax. Oh, it's a fraud. By the way, when I make fun of her like that, I love my sister. It's just, when you get to know someone, that's kind of, you talk, you aren't as you're not guarded. You know what I mean? When you know someone from decades, you can say that to each other. Oh, it's a hoax. You're an idiot. You know what I mean? But you're not trying to say, well, no, she pretty much said I was an idiot. Anyway, what I'm trying to say. People often equate the Forrest Fenn Treasure Hunt with UFOs. Of course, now that the government's starting to admit UFOs are real, there we go with a subject I've been following since I was literally a kid, like in my teens and middle school with a good friend of mine. My final speech and speech class in the 1970s in college had to do with the cover-up by our government with UFOs. And here we are all these decades later, and suddenly the government's going, oh yeah, they're real. But Bigfoot, the rest of them, I'm trying to say, I think this guy just doesn't want to be associated with something that some people might associate with frivolity, a lack of, what I'm trying to say. It's fringe. Some people think it's fringe. Yet he is totally immersed in studying the hunt. I think you're going to find what he has to say incredibly interesting. He talks about some of the court cases. He talks about his theories about the Fenn chase. His voice will be altered, and he doesn't have a name per se. Mr. X, Deep Throat, the Shadow, Mr. District Attorney. The Shadow knows. Who knows? How's that go? Who knows what darkness lurks in the souls of men? Something like that. The Shadow knows. I don't even think I got that right. All right, so what you're going to hear today is you're going to hear him and me having a conversation while I drive around very close to where I live, so you can kind of look at the area. And you're going to hear him and I and him, me and him, discussing the Forrest Fenn treasure chase. Listen carefully to what he has to say. I'm telling you, this guy is smart as a whip and has a lot of really good ideas. The audio editing that went into this is part of learning editing with video editing, is a lot. So I'm pushing out part 1 first, and in a few days I'll hopefully get part 2 out, and then part 3, and I think there's even a part 4. If you find it interesting, make sure you subscribe, and also there's a little bell next to subscribe. That can be, you hit that bell and it notifies you when something, a new video comes out. So you want to hit that, because I hope to get parts 2 and 3 and 4 out individually. It's not the old thing I used to do where I'd shove out 4 at a time, and even got a couple of complaints. People would say, man, Eric, why don't you make an hour-and-a-half movie, or just put them out one at a time? Because 4 at once, I have to sit there and blah, 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 blah. Everyone's got their complaint about everything. I think that's about everything I want to talk about. I think that's about everything. So today, enjoy part 1, and then in a few days, part 2, and then part 3 and part 4. I think you're going to really enjoy it. Really smart stuff. A lot of very smart people don't think Jack found that treasure on his own, and certainly we haven't been given any information from the Fenn Estate or anyone else that convinces me otherwise. He was told that location, given that location by someone, or he found out about it, but he did not figure it out using the poem. And I really have a hard time believing he figured it out just by figuring out where Forrest Fenn wants to die. I mean, that's as vague as figuring out that poem, which is almost impossible. Like I've said many times before, it's a virtual Rorschach test trying to figure, it's whatever it means to you is what it means, you know? So I hope you enjoy this video. More coming soon of the same series. And have a good day. Good.
Hey Eric, how are you?
How's it going? As we have discussed before, any references to you will be edited out of this video. I know that you're so we can't have any of that kind of stuff out. I understand it's a great risk that you're taking probably to be on this show today with me. Now, yes.
Thankfully, they put me in a beautiful area that I can live out the rest of my life and be in paradise.
That's fantastic. Hey, listen, so now you're saying, well, first of all, the Erskine interview I did with you was kind of choppy. My phone was running out of power. I mean, I'm sorry, my glasses, and I didn't realize it. So we now have two things that you're able to give us some advice on. We've got the Erskine lawsuit, and then we've got now Kyle Sandau. Is that his name?
Yes. So we can, Kyle Sandau, Mark Doty, and Rebecca Kaiser are filed suit in New Mexico court on May 4th against Zoe Old, the representative of the estate of Forrest Fenn, the San Lazaro Holding Company, Collective Works Bookstore, and Jack, or Jonathan Kenneth Stoof, which is known as Jack Stoof.
Wow.
The issue certainly with Erskine, if you want to discuss that initially, is that Erskine is appealing his case that he filed against Fenn. Judge dismissed the case for lack of jurisdiction, and that's really about this appeal. He wants everything to be struck because he filed it in the wrong state. So ultimately, he filed it in Arizona. The judge and all of us probably know, as laymen, that New Mexico was really where Forrest Fenn lived, the treasure currently is, allegedly, and where the treasure was in Forrest's home before he placed it somewhere in the Rocky Mountains.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, I'm only laughing because my camera's giving me trouble. It doesn't matter. The main interest is that we're able to talk to you. And speaking of a wonderful area, I'm here near the lake I live on, and we're going to see views of the lake, etc., as I drive around. So that's very interesting. The thing that seems to me true in both of these cases is, with both Kyle and Erskine, is these are these kind of frivolous lawsuits that seem to get people in trouble.
That is correct. I mean, certainly if you're Erskine, he should have known, or at least his attorneys that he hired should have known, that they were filing in the wrong jurisdiction. I mean, that's as basic as can be. So once you don't file in the right jurisdiction, even if you had a relevant argument, you can't argue it because it's filed in the wrong spot.
Right.
So he kept filing new documents, and essentially he kept doubling down, or at least putting more fuel to the fire in Arizona, where if he was going to file, it would have to be in New Mexico. The conclusion really of that case was that the judge, I think, and the courts were pretty pissed off at Erskine and awarded close to $100,000 in just fees from Forrest Fenn's attorneys, pretty much saying that it was a useless lawsuit, that they were wasting the court's time. Now they're going back again and saying, well, if I didn't file for the right jurisdiction, the case should have been struck immediately, which I don't think he's going to win on appeal, but again, they're just grasping at something, so he doesn't have to pay the $100,000 to Fenn or Fenn's attorneys.
Yeah.
Erskine refused a deal to lower the attorney's fees he owed if he would just drop the case, but he didn't. So whoever was giving Erskine advice, first of all, had him file in the wrong state, which is ridiculous. Then on top of that, once they decided it, they kept refiling other issues in Arizona, again, in the wrong jurisdiction. And then when there was a meeting to discuss reducing the fees, after the court found that Erskine would owe Fenn Estate's attorney's fees, they really just spit in the face of Fenn's attorneys, and they refused a deal to reduce the attorney's fees if they would just drop the case, but they didn't do it. So they appeal now, and to me, they need to refile. If Erskine really thinks he's got a case, they're going to have to refile in New Mexico. The question is, his attorneys that are in Arizona, are they bar members in New Mexico, or is he not going to refile? Because again, the clock is ticking. None of these people work for free.
Right. Wow. Let me ask you this. This entire premise of the end of the hunt, I don't see any legal, we got these both lawsuits going on. They're kind of frivolous. Could be that Kyle and his group, you said that they actually want the court to appoint a lawyer, an attorney, which is to me, doesn't show they're as serious as they could be. But it seems
for free. That is correct.
For free. So there's a case, there's a chance that it won't even get off the ground, right? The court could just say, well, forget it. We are not interested in doing that for you.
Well, if you read, at least my understanding is, the way that I read it, the judge denied the plaintiff's request. First of all, the plaintiffs, which were, who we discussed before, Kyle, I think is the guy that used to talk about the book San Lazaro and
yes,
his car and how important the book was, and that, Fenn owned it even though he sold it, that definitely was where the treasure is, and he was going to sue Forrest Fenn while Fenn was alive.
Yeah, the treasure was supposed to be in a little underground chamber in San Lazaro, and it had to do with the rainbow and everything. And he got threatened by Forrest Fenn with a lawsuit because Forrest got so upset with what he considered harassment by Kyle.
I believe you're right.
Yeah.
Right now, the plaintiffs are requesting $10 million plus the deed to San Lazaro. So the judge, my understanding is the judge denied the request for an attorney and gave them 3 weeks, 21 days, to state an actual case where they'll dismiss. But again, these people keep poking the bear.
Yeah.
They get burnt again because if
like Erskine.
Zoe, right,
if they're going
to actually incur legal fees, they're going to come after Kyle and other people for that. So I go back to the most effective person to me so far has been Barbara Anderson. And I believe that Barbara should have filed or at least been the attorney for a class action lawsuit. I'm still very surprised that they never filed it. I know that Barbara now, from her videos, has moved to New Mexico from Illinois, but I don't know what the status of her legal status is. If she's transferring or trying to have to take the bar in New Mexico? Do they have reciprocity for attorneys from Illinois to New Mexico? I just don't know that. But I always thought all along that if they wanted to get anywhere and they wanted real discovery, that they would file or begin a class action lawsuit. The courts, I think, would look a whole lot more favorable if there were thousands of people that filed instead of just some of these little frivolous lawsuits that they've been having to deal with.
Part of my theory about this is that I believe a good attorney, but the idea of an implied contract where Fenn would come out and said various times, you know, if you get, I mean, it was implied that you buy the book, and then if you read it and you get the poem and you get the hints and all that, you have a fair chance of finding the treasure. And I always figured it was something you could argue, look, I bought the book, 1,000 of us bought the book, 2,000, however many would want to be in a class action lawsuit, and we want to make sure that this was found fairly. And I always thought that would be but as we know, Barb has not pursued that. It's a lot more impressive to a judge when you come in with 2,000 people on a petition or whatever they call it for that, than just one guy showing up and saying, you know, I want to go up against Fenn because I think I found it.
That is correct. I still have yet to see any real evidence, and that's this current lawsuit against the Fenn Estate about San Lazaro. I still don't see any evidence that Fenn or the Fenn Estate has done anything wrong.
Right.
If you're going to challenge a certain point, you've got to have some fact. If you want the court to grant you a little leeway for discovery, you still have to come out with facts, not just innuendos.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like how do you prove a negative? It's like if we don't know the location and we're never told the location, then we have to take it on faith by Forrest Fenn and Jack that he in fact found it rightfully, when we're all sitting there going, well, we aren't sure we trust that. And of course now Fenn is dead, and what I'm getting at is, and I talk about it in part of this series, which I did earlier a few days ago, this concept that Fenn told Jack the location. You know, the idea is that he watched Jack and things. You know, Jack was on the AGK a couple of times. At the time, Toby didn't know it was Jack calling in, but he talked to Jack, and he also emailed Toby. So that was kind of out there. If Fenn was watching, the concept is, it's an old theory, that Fenn decided that, where the hell am I? Oh, sorry. That Fenn decided Jack was the lead searcher, even though he said there really wasn't one, and that he decided he won the hunt over because of the maybe ill health, maybe his cancer came back, and to make it fair, he said to Jack, look, I really want you to find this, but I feel uncomfortable giving you the exact location, but I'll give you, you know, the pinpoint location of the treasure chest, but I'll give you the location. He referred to a big area and a smaller area, or a small area and a bigger area, and that's why Jack went out there 25 times and refused to give up, even to the point where he would get in his car and cry. He knew better than anyone I've ever heard of doing this hunt that he was in the right spot, and and it makes you think, how would he be that certain of something where most of us would have given up? You know, at the most, you know, you go 5-6 trips or 5-6 times in and out, and you just say, okay, I just missed it. And my thought was, because Fenn knew that he had said, I told people whoever found it, and that way Jack would actually have to find it.
I think some of the things really bother me, and I'm sure they bother you and many other people that understand. One of them is Douglas Preston.
Yeah.
He allegedly saw the treasure chest a long time before Fenn hid it.
Yes.
He wrote a novel, if you read in 2003, called The Codex.
Yes.
How come nobody has deposed Douglas Preston?
don't know.
think that he would be one of the people that they would be interested, or somebody who was really seeking the truth would be interested in speaking with. There are other people as well, which I'd rather not discuss right now, but there are many other things. If you look in 2017, there was also a documentary feature film about the treasure made by a guy named Thomas Leach called The Lure, L-U-R-E. I highly recommend that people that are interested in the truth read both the novel The Codex and The Lure, which is a film by Thomas Leach.
And Masquerade.
Well, we can talk about Masquerade, which is always...
We should almost talk about that another day. That's a whole video in itself.
When you say the words Masquerade, I get little goosebumps that go up and down my body, because I know the story intimately. I've read about it in a very, very detailed manner, and it parallels the Fenn search in great similarities. There's a major scandal. The Sunday Times printed a story accusing the winner of fraud. That was in December of 1988. And again, I highly recommend that people just do a web search or read about Masquerade. When the scandal broke, it was worldwide news. And I kept thinking at some point after Jack, the alleged finder, wrote in Medium his story about finding it, he allegedly came out, no pun intended, because Barbara Anderson was going to, he says, was going to expose him. Jack could have gone, or Jack's attorneys, who were probably provided by Forrest Fenn, could have gone directly to the courts and had the case sealed, and had Barbara Anderson muted, and the case muted. They didn't do that. The question is, why not? So there are a lot of anomalies that are out there. Jack certainly and his attorneys could have stated about all the issues that Fenn had. People breaking into his house, people threatening their lives, and he could have used that as saying, I need the case sealed, and I need Barbara Anderson's allegations to just be muted, to just not be told publicly. The courts definitely would have done it because of the threats that were in the past to Fenn and Fenn's family and things that were surrounding the treasure. But why Jack came out is another good question. The other issue, and I'll certainly let you chat after this.
Can I hold you for 1 second? Can I hold you for 1 second?
Sure.
Okay, hold it. You know what, Tober? Part 2's coming up soon. As soon as I get it done, I'm going to push out part 2. What do you think of that? You don't care. You just said brush me. I just want to be brushed. Yeah, I know.